Think about the bread, the meat, and the cooking oil you ate this morning. Behind all of it stands an enormous company whose name you have probably never heard. It is called Cargill. It is one of the biggest companies in America, and yet most people do not know the name. That is because Cargill is a family company that has never listed on the stock market. Going public simply means opening your shares to the market so that anyone can buy and sell them. That is how most large corporations raise money and how the world gets to know them. But for almost 160 years, Cargill has stayed in the hands of a single family. Its revenue runs to more than $160 billion a year. That is an amount so vast it dwarfs almost every household brand you can think of. This silent giant moves the world from behind the food we eat every single day. Without a single famous brand, how did it come to hold the world's food supply by the throat? Let us dig into the truth of this hidden empire. The story begins in the humblest way imaginable. The year is 1865, and the American Civil War has only just ended. A man named William Cargill buys a single small grain warehouse. He bought the grain that farmers harvested, stored it, and sold it on to wherever it was needed. It looks like an unremarkable little trade, but a powerful principle is hiding inside it. A crop is harvested all at once, in one place. But people need grain all year round, in every corner of the world. Somebody has to buy that grain, hold it, and carry it thousands of miles. Cargill burrowed straight into that missing link. He added warehouses and locked up railways and ships as the business grew. Across the generations, a small grain dealer swelled into a colossal logistics empire. It was never a glamorous business that turned heads, but handling the food that people eat is a business that never, ever disappears. What Cargill does, in one sentence, is connect the farmer to your dinner table. The formal name for that is grain distribution or commodity trading. Let me put it more simply. When a farmer in Brazil harvests soybeans, Cargill buys them. Then it loads them onto vast ships that cross the Pacific to factories in Asia. Those beans become cooking oil and feed for livestock and eventually meat. A company like Cargill quietly turns every wheel in that chain out of sight, and the scale of it is beyond imagining. Cargill handles roughly a quarter of all the grain the United States exports. A large share of the meat Americans eat passes through this company too. What we see in the supermarket is a finished product, but behind it sits this gigantic invisible pipeline. Like roads or electricity, you never notice it is there until it stops, and the world stops with it. Cargill is exactly that kind of infrastructure for food. And here we come to the most fascinating question of all. Why on earth would a company this size refuse to go public? Listing would let it pull in colossal amounts of money with ease. The answer is freedom and secrecy. The moment a company lists, it has to lay its results bare in front of its shareholders. Every quarter it hands out a report card and lives at the mercy of its share price. Cargill has to do none of that. Because the family owns it, it never has to show its hand to anyone. That lets it make long decisions, looking decades ahead instead of at the next quarter. It can hold information nobody else has and move on it quietly. And in the grain trade, information is money. Whoever learns first where the harvest has failed and where the grain is piling up wins. Cargill keeps eyes and ears in every corner of the world and reads the market with what they hear. Staying outside the world's attention was, in itself, its single greatest weapon. But Cargill does not run this enormous food trade alone. There are four giants in the global grain market. People take the first letter of each and call them the ABCD. They are Archer Daniels Midland, Bunge, Cargill, and Louis Dreyfus. Between them, these four companies hold a large share of the world's grain trade. When a handful of big firms shape a market like this, economists call it an oligopoly. It is not a full monopoly, but a few players effectively rule. They may look like fierce competitors, but in the end it all happens inside one very small club. Nobody knows better than they do where the grain is and where it is needed. They own the ports, the warehouses, the ships, and the information networks. For a new company, breaking into this game is close to impossible. You cannot catch up overnight with infrastructure and intelligence built over more than a century. So the price and the flow of what we eat is largely settled in the hands of these four invisible firms, and we do not even know their names. Most of the time, this system runs quietly and efficiently. But when a crisis hits, food turns into a devastating weapon overnight. Suppose a drought or a war destroys the harvest in one of the world's great breadbaskets. Suddenly the planet is short of wheat and grain. Prices explode, and poor countries begin to worry about their next meal. A few years ago, when war broke out in exactly such a grain belt, world wheat prices shot through the roof. In countries far away, the price of bread climbed and hunger spread. And it is in moments precisely like these that the power of the grain giants shows itself, because it is largely they who decide where the grain is released and where it is held back. In crises like that one, the grain majors have gone on to post record profits. This is where two opposing views split apart. One side says these firms move scarce grain quickly to where it is needed and soften the crisis. The other side says they exploit the crisis for enormous profit, with nobody watching over them. That survival itself, the food we eat, rests in so few hands is a genuinely chilling thought. This quiet giant also drags a deep shadow behind it. The first is the environment. Feeding the world's appetite means farming an almost unimaginable amount of land. Critics never stop pointing out that forests are pushed back and ecosystems destroyed in the process. In South America especially, the huge grain companies are repeatedly linked to rainforest being turned into soybean fields. The second problem is transparency. Because it is not listed, it is very hard from the outside to see how it earns its money or how it makes its decisions. It handles a huge share of the world's food, and yet there is almost no window into it. The third is the concentration of power. Many argue that food, the very thing our survival depends on, pooled into so few hands is a danger in itself. Cargill, of course, answers that it is essential infrastructure that feeds the world reliably. And it is true that without these firms, the flow of grain itself would be badly shaken. A necessary giant or a dangerous power? That question is still being argued today. So what does the story of Cargill leave us with? The biggest lesson is that the things which truly move the world are the hardest ones to see. We give our attention to dazzling brands and famous corporations. But what actually holds our lives up is often infrastructure whose name we never learn. The food we eat, the electricity we use, the chips in our hands. All of it works that way. The second lesson is the power of information. The secret to Cargill surviving 160 years was, in the end, the ability to know before anyone else. Whoever reads first where the world is heading quietly ends up holding the greatest power. The third is a question about balance. Do we concentrate power in a few hands for the sake of efficiency, or spread it out for the sake of safety? That is a problem carried not just by food, but by semiconductors, energy, and every other critical industry. The next time you buy a loaf of bread at the supermarket, try to picture the invisible giant standing behind it. The way you see the world will get just a little bit deeper. If you want more deep dives that dig into the hidden truths of the economy, subscribe and come along for the next one.